The car you drive, the clothes you wear, or your home decor is just some of the ways you can express yourself. As a leather crafter, you also express yourself through the types and styles of leather projects you make. Here at MPR Leatherworks, we design leather patterns, and we love it when leather crafters add their own creative spin to our pattern products. Today's project is the cone pendant light. It looks very minimalistic, but it can be customized in so many different ways. At the end of this video, we will share some creative options that you can use to make your cone pendant light shine. So be sure to watch to the end or use the timestamps in the description of this video. I will show you step by step how to make the cone pendant light. This project requires some veg tan leather of about 6 to 7 ounces, a small piece of 3mm brown masonite, a laser cutter, some electrical items, basic leather tools and supplies, and the pattern file. The pattern file includes both lightburn and DXF versions of the pattern, so you can use either one for the project. I will be showing you my settings in lightburn, but you have to change your settings to fit your laser machine setup. I'm using the xtool D1 Pro extended laser with a 40-watt laser module, and I'm controlling it with lightburn. When you open the file, all the parts that need to be cut are on the file. However, some parts are cut from leather and other parts from masonite. So we're going to start with the leather parts. The little circle at the bottom, that has to be cut from masonite. And so I'm going to disable these layers so that they are not going to be output by the laser at this moment. So I'm just going to move it aside for the time being and only focus on the parts that need to be cut from the leather. You will see there's 2 layers. The first layer is all the inside cuts, and the second layer is all the outside cuts. I'm ensuring that all my settings are correct. While you are watching me do this, consider taking the time to please subscribe and like this video. It really helps a lot. I use absolute coordinates, and the cut selected graphics option is turned off in this case. I'm going to preview the project, checking that the order of the layers is correct. It's looking good. Lay the leather flat on the honeycomb. I use magnets to secure the leather. Now I will frame the project, then start cutting. Here is some footage of the cutting process. While it is playing, tell us in the comments if you prefer hand cutting or laser cutting your leather for your projects. That cut beautifully. Now let's cut the masonite. In lightburn, I will now toggle the output switches on the relevant layers so that we can cut the masonite. I will move the part to the top of my grid, then preview the project. I notice that I have the layers in the wrong order. I always cut, starting in the center, then moving outwards. Next, I double check all my settings. When I'm happy with it, I will frame the project, then cut the project. And here's the part we need, perfectly cut. Let's move on to the next part of the project. So here are the parts that we have cut out. I'm going to use a damp cloth and wipe all the edges that have been cut with a laser. As the laser cutting leaves a soot layer, which can rub off and make your hands and your project quite dirty. You'll see this especially on the leather. The soot rubs off quite a lot. So you might have to do a few passes of cleaning to get the leather edges nice and clean. When it comes to the holes that we have laser cut, there is soot in them too. So when you're going to be passing the stitching thread through these holes, the thread will become dirty. So to clean the holes, I am first going to blast it with some compressed air. And then I will use some thin yarn and pass it through the holes to clean the soot. I will probably have to do a couple of passes. The first time I pass the yarn through the holes, I'm going to moisten the yarn with some isopropyl alcohol to help with the cleaning process. If you're going to be using a light stitching thread to assemble the project, it is important that the stitching holes are clean, else your stitching thread is just going to pick up all that dirt, and by the end of your stitching, your thread will be really nasty. Now, if you don't want to struggle with cleaning all these holes, the other option you can do is that when you laser cut the leather, don't cut the holes all the way through. Lower the settings on your laser machine so that only fine lines are cut, just to mark where those stitching holes are. Then afterwards you can come in with a hole punch and manually punch all the stitching holes. So by doing this, your stitching holes will be soot-free and you won't have to bother with cleaning all the holes. The next step is to bevel the top and the bottom edge of the cone light. Bevel both the front side and the back side. When you've done beveling, then use some tokonole or other substance and burnish the edges that you have just beveled. We have finally arrived at the part where we stitch it all together. Get all the leather parts, your stitching thread and 2 stitching needles. The leather strip has one end that is convex shape and the other end is concave. Place the strip on the larger piece of leather the right way around, as shown here in the video. Use stitching markers or small pieces of thread to hold the pieces in place. I measured the thread at about 9 times the length of the leather strip. Using a needle on each end of the thread, start stitching the cone from the small side using the cross-stitch method. I will show some of my stitching as well as a drawing to illustrate the stitching procedure. Continue stitching in the same manner all along the cone. When you have stitched to the end of the cone, pass the thread back over each other, and when the thread is on the inside of the cone, you can tie it off or pass the thread through the existing stitches, then cut and burn the thread ends. I chose not to make knots to keep the finishing cleaner, as this part of the light could be seen when it is hanging. Now we're going to add the masonite bit. Ensure the notch that is in the masonite is lined up with the leather strip that is part of the join. Insert the masonite so that one of the arms fit into the holes in the cone. Then, using a bit of pressure, fit the masonite in place so all the arms protrude in the holes in the leather cone. Lastly, add the electrical stuff. Add the cord to the light fitting. I added a plug to the other end of the electrical cord, but if you will hang it from your ceiling, then add the appropriate fitting. Simply screw the light fitting to the masonite part. Insert the lamp, and your cone pendant is complete. Congratulations! Now, as promised, here are some creative alternatives that you can attempt when making your cone pendant light. There are so many options, and we hope this has inspired you to express yourself with a cone pendant light. Thanks for watching. We'll see you the next time.